So this is a Sony HT-A3000. It's one of Sony's mid-range, fully self-contained Dolby Atmos soundbars. Now, just like with Sony's other soundbars, the HT-A3000 packs a whole lot of bass all on its own, but this thing is pretty big. Now, even though this soundbar isn't my favorite, it is a good option to consider if you need something with a whole lot of bass all on its own, and if you can't add an external subwoofer. And it's also a default option if you have a Sony Bravia TV. Now, when it comes to pricing, this soundbar has a retail price of $700, which is up there, and this is actually Sony's most affordable soundbar in their A-series lineup of soundbars, because we also have the 5000 and the 7000. Now, with this soundbar, if you use it with a compatible Sony Bravia TV, then you can have the TV's built-in speakers play in sync with the soundbar, plus you can also add an external subwoofer, and you can also add a pair of satellite speakers. But in this review, we're only going to be focusing on the soundbar itself. Now first, we need to address this soundbar's design and size. Now, the HT-A3000 has a length of 37.5 inches, a width of about 5 inches, and a height of about 2.5 inches. Now, height-wise, I would say that this soundbar is very standard. However, lengthwise, this soundbar is very big, especially given its speaker setup, and this speaker is very wide. Because both the Bose Smart Soundbar 600 and the Sonos Beam Gen 2, two very popular soundbars, are dwarfed by the Sony. Now, from a material standpoint, the soundbar has a mostly plastic body and there's a metal grille on the front. Now, the soundbar does a really good job of not reflecting any light when watching movies with it. However, this soundbar does have a built-in screen. Now, by default, the screen is always on, but thankfully, you can turn off the screen with the included remote. And really, the only thing that the screen really shows is just the volume and source. Now, regarding ports, the soundbar does plug in via a universal AC port, and thankfully there is no external power brick that you have to worry about, so wiring this soundbar into your home theater setup is going to be a little easier, and it's also going to make wall mounting this soundbar a little easier as well. However, just keep in mind the soundbar does not come included with a wall mounting kit. However, the soundbar does have wall mounting holes directly in the chassis itself, and you can use your own screws to wall mount this soundbar. However, just keep in mind, if you do decide to wall mount this soundbar, just make sure that your wall is sturdy enough, because the soundbar weighs in at 10 pounds. Now, continuing on the topic of ports, the HT-A3000 does have a single HDMI eARC port, and the soundbar also comes included with an HDMI cable. However, the major difference between this soundbar and its larger siblings, the HT-A5000 and the HT-A7000, is that it doesn't have an HDMI input, so you can't directly plug in either a Blu-ray player or a gaming console. Now, the soundbar also has your typical optical port, and it also has a USB-A port, so if you want, you can plug in a USB stick and play music off of it. But more importantly, the soundbar also has Wi-Fi, so you can always stream music through it by either using AirPlay or by using Chromecast. But if you don't want to, or you can't hook up this soundbar up to Wi-Fi, you can always connect to it through a Bluetooth connection. But personally, I highly recommend that you connect this soundbar up to Wi-Fi so that you can stream music through it by either using AirPlay or by using Chromecast. But also, if it's hooked up to Wi-Fi, then you'll be able to use Sony's Music Center app and control the soundbar itself. Now, this soundbar also comes included with a very capable remote control, but personally, the app is just better. But now, let's talk about how this soundbar actually performs. Regarding speaker setups, the HT-A3000 has a total of 3 front-mount firing speakers and dual front-mount firing subwoofers with exhaust ports that shoot out the sides. But the very important thing to keep in mind here is, even though this is a Dolby Atmos soundbar, the 3000 doesn't have any upward firing speakers. The Dolby Atmos here is artificial. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. Now, even though this soundbar has a lot of bass to it, it does lean towards a warmer sound signature. So the soundbar doesn't get as loud as you'd expect it to, but it is capable of filling a small or medium-sized room with sound. However, so that you can see what I'm talking about, we're going to be using this soundbar at max volume, and we're going to be comparing it to the Bose Smart Soundbar 300, which is another very popular but also very balanced sounding soundbar, and it's playing at 75% volume.
It's like you energy was kissing my soul back to life, was living now. It feels like every part of me is dying. Yeah, you're gone without a trace. You left me where no one can find me. There's no sign of life out here. I scream and it goes silent. I tried so hard, couldn't get my way out. Lost definition of time. Losing my mind in this ghost town. Every message that I send you, you just leave them all read. Now every part of me is hurting, 'cause my heart I don't deserve this. But you just for you to help me in the end. Yeah, you're gone without a trace. You left me where no one can find me. There's no sign of life out here. I scream and it goes silent. I tried so hard, but I can't find my way out. Lost definition of time. Losing my mind in this ghost I'm losing my mind, yeah. I'm losing my mind in this ghost town.
Enemy spotted. Level 9. Got it busted. Target spotted. Reload. I am not on.
Strong enough to keep. Getting shot. Enemy close.
That entire squad has left. I will assist you.
So first off, obviously anything is going to sound better than your TV's built-in speakers. Unless you have a higher end TV, it's most likely that your TV just has a pair of downward firing speakers that bounce sound off of the table. They don't get all that loud, and at higher volume, they do become a distorted mess when the bass really gets going. Now, with the Sony HT-A3000, this soundbar has a whole lot of bass all on its own. You're really going to be able to feel what's happening on the screen. And if you want more bass, you can do that, because in this sound test, the 3000 was playing with its bass set to mid, and you can always increase it another notch. But the drawback about this soundbar having such a warm sound signature, as in it has a lot of bass, is that sometimes it can be a little hard to hear the mids. So if you're watching a movie with this soundbar, you're probably going to have to raise the volume on it so that you can actually hear the dialogue. But then when those big action scenes start, then everything might sound a little too loud. Whereas with, let's say, the Bose Smart Soundbar 300, a much more balanced sounding soundbar, since its mids are a lot more forward, it's a lot easier to actually hear dialogue with this soundbar, and it's also going to sound much louder as well. However, it just doesn't have as much bass as the 3000. Now, with the HT-A3000, you can always combat its warmer sound signature by going in and raising the treble on the soundbar. But even still, instrument separation on this soundbar isn't the greatest. Everything just sounds a little bit too close together, because when compared to the Bose Smart Soundbar 300, it just sounded a little bit more open in this sound test. So even though personally this isn't my preferred soundbar because its instrument separation is a little lacking and just because of its sheer size, I still think the HT-A3000 is a good option to consider if you need something with a whole lot of bass all on its own, because depending on your setup or needs, maybe adding an external subwoofer just isn't an option for you, but you still want a lot of bass. However, just keep in mind that this review was with the soundbar by itself. If you were to use this soundbar with a compatible Sony Bravia TV, then the built-in speakers in the TV could help this soundbar not sound as shallow. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.